Did you know that some of the most feared gunslingers in the Wild West were not men at all, but women? On the frontier, where law was as thin as dust in the wind, a handful of women strapped on pistols and rewrote what it meant to survive. Their names are whispered through history, sometimes half-truth, sometimes myth, but always unforgettable. The West was supposed to be a man's world. Cowboys, sheriffs, outlaws, and desperados filled the headlines. But behind the curtain of history, these 5 women stood tall, armed, and unafraid, proving that courage and ruthlessness knew no gender. So saddle up as we ride through the stories of 5 deadly women who ruled the Wild West. 1. Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen born. Myra Maybelle Shirley in Missouri in 1848, Belle Starr grew up during a time of chaos. Her family owned a farm, and by all accounts, her childhood could have been ordinary. But when the Civil War exploded across her home state, it pulled her into the violence of guerrilla fighters and outlaw gangs. Belle was smart, quick-witted, and knew how to turn heads. She wasn't content to sit on the sidelines. Dressed in black velvet and lace, she often rode with pistols strapped to her waist, looking every bit the queen of crime. Outlaws respected her not just for her beauty, but for her brains. She knew how to plan, when to strike, and how to keep her men loyal. For years, she ruled her corner of the frontier like royalty, feared, admired, and impossible to ignore. But her life ended the way many outlaw stories do. In 1889, she was ambushed on a lonely trail, shot in the back and left for dead. The killer was never found. Maybe it was a jealous rival, a betrayed lover, or even one of her own gang. With so many enemies, anyone could have pulled the trigger. Her death only fed her legend. Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen, a woman who played the outlaw game just as hard as any man. 2. Pearl Hart, the Lady Bandit. Fast forward a decade to 1899. A young Canadian-born woman named Pearl Hart was living in Arizona, struggling to survive after her marriage fell apart. She was broke, desperate, and out of options. That's when she made a choice that stunned the West. Pearl and her partner Joe Boot robbed a stagecoach headed for Globe, Arizona. She wore men's clothes, carried a revolver, and ordered the passengers to hand over their valuables. Can you imagine their shock? A woman pointing a gun at them in the middle of the desert. The newspapers couldn't get enough of the story. They nicknamed her the Lady Bandit and painted her as both scandalous and fascinating. When Pearl was caught, she didn't beg for forgiveness. In court, she told the judge she had no regrets, saying she only did what she had to do. That defiance made her a sensation across the country. Though she only ever pulled off one robbery, her legend grew larger than life. Pearl Hart forced people to ask a question they weren't ready for. If a woman could rob a stagecoach and face down a sheriff, what else could women do? 3. Calamity Jane, the Wild Spirit. If Belle Starr was the Queen of Outlaws and Pearl Hart was the Lady Bandit, then Calamity Jane was the West's Wild Spirit. Born Martha Jane Canary in 1852, she grew up poor, her childhood marked by hardship after losing her parents young. She wandered from town to town, toughening herself with every mile. Calamity Jane dressed in men's clothes, rode like a soldier, and wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. She fought alongside troops during campaigns against native tribes, earning a reputation as both fearless and reckless. She drank heavily, cursed freely, and lived louder than life. Her name became a magnet for rumors. Some said she saved wagon trains from attacks. Others claimed she rode with Wild Bill Hickok himself. She told stories that blurred the line between truth and tall tale, but whether real or exaggerated, they kept her name alive. What terrified polite society wasn't just her gun or her temper. It was the fact that she lived entirely on her own terms. Calamity Jane didn't want to fit into a box. She didn't care about rules, expectations, or gossip. She was a survivor in a world that offered women few choices. And for that, she became unforgettable. 4. Annie Oakley, the sharpshooter. Not every deadly woman of the West was an outlaw. Some, like Annie Oakley, turned skill into power. Annie was born in 1860 in Ohio, into poverty so deep that as a child, she hunted game just to keep her family alive. She picked up a rifle and discovered she had a gift few men could match. By her teens, her aim was so sharp she could hit targets others thought impossible. When she joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, she became a star. Crowds gasped as she split playing cards in mid-air, shot dimes tossed into the sky, and even snuffed out candle flames with a single bullet. Kings, dukes, and even native warriors tested her skill, and all of them left humbled. Annie Oakley didn't break the law, but she broke something just as powerful: the myth that women were weak. She proved on the world stage that a woman with a rifle could outshoot the best men alive. And in her own way, that was more dangerous to the old ways of thinking than any outlaw could ever be. 5. Rose Dunn, the Rose of the Cimarron. Our last story belongs to a girl barely old enough to be called a woman, Rose Dunn, also known as the Rose of the Cimarron. At just 15 years old, Rose fell in with a gang of outlaws in Oklahoma. She carried supplies, delivered guns, and even stood by them in shootouts. One story tells how, during a gunfight with U.S. Marshals, she ran through bullets to deliver extra ammunition to her lover. That single act earned her a reputation as both loyal and dangerous. The press painted her as a criminal temptress, a girl corrupted by the outlaw life. But behind the sensational headlines was a teenager caught up in a world far bigger than herself. Was she truly an outlaw? Or just a young girl swept up in love and survival, trying to find her place in a lawless land? The legacy of the deadly women. 5 women. 5 legends, each from different corners of the frontier, each feared for different reasons. Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen who ruled with charm and cunning. Pearl Hart, the Lady Bandit who shocked the nation with her defiance. Calamity Jane, the wild spirit who lived louder than life. Annie Oakley, the sharpshooter who proved a woman's aim could humble kings. And Rose Dunn, the teenager who braved bullets for love and loyalty. Some fought for power, some for survival, some for freedom. But together, they shattered the idea that the West was only a man's world. The truth is, history has always struggled with them. Men like Jesse James or Billy the Kid are remembered as legends, sometimes even heroes. But women with guns? They've been remembered as dangerous, unstable, or unnatural. Maybe that says more about the people writing history than about the women themselves. So I'll leave you with this. Who do you think was the most dangerous woman of the Wild West? Belle Starr, Pearl Hart, Calamity Jane, Annie Oakley, or Rose Dunn? Drop your answer in the comments below, and don't be surprised if the truth is wilder than the legends we've been told.